In this presentation, we will discuss Clark and Mayer's modality principle. We will cover the following topics: what the modality principle states, its limitations, its supporting psychology, evidence for using the modality principle, when the modality principle applies, and what exactly we don't know about the modality principle. First things first, the modality principle states that students learn better from images and text together than from text alone. In this first guideline of the modality principle, Clark and Mayer recommend that you present words as speech rather than on-screen text. Based on the cognitive theory and research evidence, using speech in e-learning environments enhances comprehension by leveraging the natural way that people process spoken language. Speech also helps learners with reading difficulties or visual impairments. While there is a lot of evidence for using the modality principle, there are some limitations to using this principle. Using spoken rather than written text can cause a lot of noise in the learning environment. It can also be difficult to follow this principle when the technology being used cannot meet the requirements for using sound, such as bandwidth or headsets. It is also not ideal to use sound for constantly changing information. It would simply make it difficult to keep updating that portion of the course. Some learners also need text for memory support when using new or technical terms. A question I have for you is, what are the limitations of the modality principle in e-learning, particularly regarding how the reliance on audio and graphics may impact information retention compared to using text alongside visuals? Now, let's look at the supporting psychology for the modality principle. First, we will focus on the information acquisition view of learning. There are various theories as to how people learn, and some believe in this information acquisition view of learning, which simply believes that it is the instructor's job to present information to learners, and the learners are to simply acquire that information. While many hold this view, it isn't the most helpful way to have learners engage with the material because that's simply not how people learn. Instructors need to present material and present it in a way that is consistent with how people learn, which leads to the next psychological principle, the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. Now, in the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, learning depends both on the information presented and the cognitive processes used by the learner. Studies show that people have two separate information processing channels, which are the visual and auditory channel. The visual channel is for things such as written tags, graphics, animations, while the auditory processing channel is for sounds such as spoken word, music, and such. Written text and visuals require the learner to process both these sources of information in that visual channel, which could possibly cause cognitive overload. Conversely, if you were to present text verbally as speech alongside graphics, those two are presented in two separate channels, the visual and the auditory channel. Neither channel is overloaded, and this allows the learner to process both the words and the images, which will then enrich and amplify their learning experience. Now that we are on board with the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, let's look at the modality effect. Simply put, the modality effect states that people learn more deeply from multimedia lessons when words explaining concurrent graphics are presented as speech rather than on-screen text. And through research, we have been able to find that the modality effect tends to be stronger for students with low prior knowledge rather than high knowledge, for students with low rather than high working memory capacity, when the presentation is system-paced rather than learning-paced, and when the words are presented in shorter segments rather than longer segments. Now, looking at the evidence for using the modality principle. Multiple studies show that learners retain more information when audio is combined with graphics, as it engages multiple senses and reinforces understanding. And we should also consider that it allows learners to process through two different processing channels rather than one channel and causing cognitive overload. Audio explanations can highlight key points and provide context that might be mixed with text alone. This combination also helps maintain attention, making the learning experience more dynamic and more engaging. Additionally, audio paired with graphics can simplify complex information, making it easier for learners to absorb and remember information. And based on this evidence, I ask you, how does the combination of audio with graphics enhance information retention compared to using graphics and text alone in e-learning environments? Let's look at when the modality principle applies. After we have discussed the modality principle, you may wonder, when is it ever necessary to use printed text? Because at this moment, it sounds like it should never be used. We should remember that our goal is to simply reduce the cognitive load on the learner's visual channel by offloading some information onto the auditory channel, typically through spoken or narrated text. Like other principles, the modality principle should be applied in a way that aligns with how people learn. And this is through the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. And this means that we encourage the use of verbal commentary when the material is complex or presented at a rapid pace. However, for technical terms, directions to a practice exercise, or content presented in the learner's second language, it is appropriate to provide printed text as a reference. Let's look at an example for when the modality principle applies. This image illustrates a multimedia course that applies the modality principle to an animation for an e-learning course on Google Sheets. The lesson demonstrates how to find the sum of products using functions in Google Sheets. As the animation demonstrates the steps of this process, the audio describes the actions for the learner. Because the visual is complex, audio allows the learner to focus on the animation and audio without overloading the visual and auditory channels. Now, let's look at an image that illustrates a violation of the modality principle. Instead of using audio to describe the text to find the sum of products, on-screen text is used in this example. Learners may suffer from an overload of their visual channels, as both the image and written text must be processed by this same channel. Additionally, learners cannot present equal attention to both the words and the graphic. On to a comprehension check. Let's see what you think about this scenario here. My e-learning material is quite easy for me, and I have control to navigate forward and backward. Does the modality principle apply in this situation? The answer is no, because if the content is easy and the learner has navigation control, the modality principle becomes less important. Now, let's look at what we don't know about the modality principle. Many questions remain unresolved. For instance, what should we do if providing audio is not feasible? How can we avoid overloading the visual channel and mitigate the negative effects of on-screen text? Additionally, how does the alternating use of audio and text affect learning? Does inconsistency in the use of text and audio have similar impact? And does prolonged use of audio narration diminish its benefits? There are many more mysteries surrounding the modality principle. While we work hard on it, we would appreciate your input on these issues. I would also like to give a big thanks to the team members that I worked with on this project. They were very accommodating, and I thank them for all their hard work.